Good evening from New York. I'm John Hayden. We have some big breaking news. Trump has catastrophic day as major cracks surface. Let me start with a number, not a headline, not a hot take, a number from a survey. The kind of survey that asks ordinary Americans a simple, honest question about whether they feel good or bad about their financial future. The answer that came back this morning was the worst answer recorded since 1952. Not since the 1973 oil embargo shut down gas stations across the country. Not since the dot-com crash wiped out retirement accounts in 2001. Not since the 2008 financial crisis took homes from millions of families. Right now, today, the people who actually live inside this economy feel worse about what is coming than at any point in over 7 decades of asking. That is not a political opinion. That is a data point from millions of real people telling the truth about their lives. So I want you to sit with that for one moment before we move forward. Because here is the thing that should bother every single person watching this tonight. The same morning that number dropped, the stock market hit a record high. Those two facts do not coexist by accident. And by the end of tonight, you will understand exactly how they coexist by design. Now, here is what the President of the United States did the moment that data landed. He did not call an emergency economic briefing. He did not address the nation. He did not acknowledge that the people he claims to represent feel more economically desperate than at any point since before most of us were born. He opened his phone and attacked a television host who had already been fired. Twice. 2 posts about Stephen Colbert. No talent, no ratings, finished, done. Watch his hands. I mean that literally, not as a metaphor. When the real news is genuinely catastrophic, the noise machine activates on a schedule you can set your clock to. After Colbert, he announced a $1.8 billion fund framed as support for January 6 participants, written with language that gives him personal immunity from IRS audits and protection from any tax fraud or tax evasion he may have personally committed. He posted that he gave up a fortune by not settling his case. Let me be precise about this so nobody walks away confused. There was no cause of action. The claims were time-barred under the statute of limitations. The maximum possible statutory damages, if you could somehow argue past the time bar, would have been $1,000. 450,000 other Americans were caught in the same data breach that his own administration's IRS contractor created in 2019. He brought the lawsuit himself in January of 2026. Nobody is buying this argument. But the noise machine does not need to be believable. It only needs to be loud enough to fill the space where accountability should be. And while it ran, the actual news kept arriving. The blockade is not working. Over 24 MQ-9 Reaper drones, each one costing tens of millions of dollars, each one representing American military capability deployed in a conflict Congress never formally authorized, have been destroyed. The IRGC Navy escorted 35 commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz in a single 24-hour window. Oil tankers, container ships, cargo moving freely under Iranian military escort, while official American press releases describe a functioning blockade. You do not have to take anyone's word for this. The radar tracking data is publicly available. Anyone with an internet connection can watch it in real time. The ships are moving. The blockade is failing. And underneath the military failure, the economic one deepens. Inflation expectations climbing toward 5% by year end. Foreign governments methodically reducing their holdings in U.S. Treasury bonds. Countries around the world quietly building trade and currency arrangements that do not require the dollar. The global economic order is reshaping itself around American unpredictability. And someone is positioned to profit from every single disruption. Now slow down with me, because this next sequence is the one I need you to really watch. This morning, the same morning, the worst consumer confidence reading in 73 years arrived, Donald Trump made a post. 4 words: new stock market record. That is all. No context, no elaboration, just a signal. Within minutes of that post, not hours, minutes, Barack Ravid at Axios published a story that the commander of the Pakistani army was traveling to Tehran to broker a deal between Iran and the United States. Then Reuters followed. A Qatari delegation had arrived in Tehran to support the same negotiations. The market moved. It surged. People who were already positioned made money. And now I need you to hold one number in your head. In the first quarter of this year alone, Donald Trump made 3,700 individual stock trades. One new trade every 9 minutes of every single trading day. In companies whose CEOs he invites to the White House. In companies whose leadership travels with him on official trips. In companies that are directly affected by the policy decisions his administration makes every day. Then he held a press conference alongside his newly appointed Federal Reserve Chair, stood at the podium, pulled out his phone, looked up the live stock price, and announced the number to the room like he was presenting a gift he had personally assembled. Do you see the sequence? Post the signal, watch the leaks follow, watch the market move, watch the press conference confirm the move. 3,700 trades this quarter. I am not going to call this a coincidence. I am going to ask you the question that you are already asking yourself. In any other context, in any boardroom, in any regulated trading environment, what is the precise legal term for a person who has market-moving information, a portfolio positioned to benefit when markets move, and a platform that reaches millions of people who follow their signals? You already know the answer. You have known it for a while. While all of this was unfolding domestically, something equally significant was happening at the level of the Western alliance that most coverage treated as a footnote. Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, said something publicly this week that represents a genuine shift in the architecture of the post-World War II international order. He asked in a formal address why Europe, one of the wealthiest regions on the planet, remains dependent on the United States to defend itself against Russia. That is not a polite diplomatic observation. That is the head of the Western Alliance asking out loud in public whether the arrangement still makes sense. Then Marco Rubio went further, demanding that NATO participate in offensive operations in the Strait of Hormuz, suggesting American commitment to the alliance should be reconsidered when allies declined. And then being asked directly by a reporter whether he wants NATO's help to put pressure on Cuba. His answer was silence, followed by, "NATO's far from Cuba." I need to be clear about what Rubio is actually demanding here, because the language matters. NATO is a defensive alliance. It was designed as a defensive alliance. It was signed, ratified, and built on the explicit principle of collective defense, not collective offense. Demanding that it become an offensive military instrument is not a reform of NATO. It is the end of NATO described in polite language. And the silence after the Cuba question was not an awkward moment. It was the sound of a foreign policy that cannot survive a direct question. Here is where everything lands. Not as theory, as logical consequence that you can trace with your finger from one point to the next. Trump lost the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade is failing in real time, documented on publicly available radar data. Oil prices are climbing. Consumer confidence is at a 73-year low, partly because of what rising energy costs do to every price in every store in every town across the country. And this week, the governor of Louisiana, just returned from a trip to Greenland, said on camera that Greenland could be producing 2 million barrels of oil per day within 10 months. Consider what that relieves in the Strait of Hormuz. Consider what that does to energy leverage in the Western Hemisphere. Consider what that does to the balance sheets of the companies in which the president's portfolio is positioned. The people of Greenland were asked whether they want to become part of the United States. They answered. The word was no, not let's discuss terms, not what is the offer, not we are open to conversations, no. And the response to their no is to keep talking about their rare earths, their gallium deposits, their supply chain value for Louisiana refineries, and their 2 million barrels per day. Follow the oil. In this administration, it has never once pointed anywhere other than exactly where the money is going. So here's where I want to leave you tonight. We started with a number, the worst consumer confidence reading in 73 years. We end with a question that number makes completely inevitable. When the people who actually live inside this economy feel more economically desperate than at any point since 1952, and the stock market is hitting records, and 3,700 trades are being placed per quarter in companies with direct White House access, and the blockade is failing, and the Western alliance is fracturing, and the answer to losing one oil route is attempting to seize another from an ally who already said no. The question is not what went wrong. The question is who decided at every step of this that this was acceptable. That is not a left question or a right question. It is the only question. And I believe you deserve an honest answer to it, because the economy you are living in right now is not an accident. It is the predictable output of a system run by people who are profiting from the chaos. And the first step toward changing it is being able to name it clearly. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment. A really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.